Congratulations on surviving the chapter 1! I know it was a calculated risk on our part to start with a lot of physics, because we are well aware that physics is not exactly a favorite subject, at least for the most of us. However, we wanted to emphasize something very, very important. What we are talking about here, it's not just a philosophy or wishful thinking or perspective or opinion. It is actually a science. And it's a good thing, because science is always 100% provable, and it works every time for everyone. So if you are wondering why are we starting with physics, that's because what we are talking about here is actually an instruction manual, user's guide, how to mold, how to use reality as it is. And of course, basis for that is how reality actually works. Therefore, physics. So for those of you who missed chapter 1, go now and watch it. But just a few important pointers we'll recap here for those who just joined us. First of all, reality is always subjective. Your perception of life, your experiences are always 100% subjective. There is no such thing as objective reality. For example, let's say you fall in love. Okay, and now someone comes to you and says, you're not really in love. You just think you are. Now, does that make any sense? Of course not. If you think that you are in love, then you are in love. No one can tell you, objectively, you're not in love. You may just think you are. Or you're nervous. There's no reason to be nervous. You're not really nervous. Objectively, you're not nervous. However, subjectively, you may be nervous. Now I'm asking you, are you nervous or not? So, reality is always 100% subjective. There is nothing objective about reality. Second big issue, second point that we really wanted to emphasize in the first chapter is that everything is energy. Everything is energy. Everything that you can feel or see or touch or smell or taste, it's just an energy slowed to certain vibration thanks to force that's both intelligent and conscious. So, universe is one giant energy soup, and it contains only one and one thing only, and it is energy that is both intelligent and conscious, or for short, consciousness. There is only one thing in the universe, and that's consciousness. Okay? Third thing that we discovered, when you closely examine what you really want in your life more of, what do you want abundance of, it boils down to things like happiness, peace, abundance, joy, love, right? These are all emotions. Emotion literally means emotion, energy in motion. So what we really want abundance of in our life are just certain qualities of energy. Energy in a certain vibration that our body will interpret as joy, as happiness, as peace, and so on and so on. So, we are living in a universe that's entirely made of energy. It is just energy. And what we really want in our life more of is a certain quality of energy. So, when you say, I will be happy only when I have a bigger car or a better house or a love of my life or family or whatever, you're barking at the wrong tree. You are looking in the domain of matter. And what you really want is energy. That goes with everything. For example, you want more friends. You want more people that will make you feel in a certain way. They make you feel joyful or happy or whatever. And you don't want people in your life that will make you feel heavy or burdened, right? So even in our interpersonal relationships, what we are really looking for are not people as per se. What we really want is a certain quality of energy. So it makes sense to listen Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest scientists that the world ever had, who said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And of course, when you say secrets of the universe, first things that pops to mind are distant galaxies and planets and whatever. But we are part of that universe too, right? So if you want to find the secrets of yourself, of your life, of your environment, you should also think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And we are in so much luck because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. One guy, Dr. David Hawkins, already established a link between your internal frequency, your vibration, and emotions. So by using emotions, kind of our measuring device, we can see in what vibration we are, and we'll take it from there. We'll see where that examination will lead us. So this part of the course, we are going to do a little bit backwards. First of all, we are going to lay out results that Dr. David Hawkins gave us. Then we are going to take a look at the methodology, how these results were obtained, and then in the end, maybe we will understand the question that we started from. Okay. So what we are going to do here, we are going to write a list, a map, if you wish, a map of consciousness, map of vibrations that people, while living in this human domain, can have. Then we will see how that relates to our frequency, energy, or vibration, and what we can learn from that. So it is a map of consciousness, and it is really important because without a map, it is really difficult to find the treasure. And treasure in our case are peace, love, joy, happiness, and all those beautiful emotions, energies, vibrations that we would like to have more in our life. So, without further ado, we are going to do this. For each emotional state, and we will see very soon why it is called a state, we will write first a number that we'll discuss later what it means, then name of the emotional state, then emotion that goes with it, and the worldview that's connected with that emotion. Because, as we will see pretty soon, the way you perceive life is very directly connected to your current emotional state. But it will get clearer as we start. So, without further ado, we'll start with our map of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. And it starts at level 20. Shame. Emotion is humiliation, and the world is perceived as miserable. Usually when you say shame, people immediately visualize some extreme example of it. Maybe Japanese warrior samurai committing horrible form of suicide, harakiri or seppuku, because he somehow dishonored, discredited, he lost his face, he is humiliated. However, shame has much more, well, less extreme examples. For example, how about speaking in public? This is one of the most common fears, and actually in our psychology it is classified as phobia, so a form of fear. But actually it's a shame. Because what you are really worried about when you are standing in front of people and talking about something is that what will they think of you? You think that by coming in front of people, you're being judged. They are analyzing every detail, your nails, your clothing, how are you speaking, what are you talking about. They're just waiting for you to make some terrible mistake so they can laugh at you. However, they don't. They just don't. Let me give you a secret. Nobody ever thinks about you. Everyone thinks only about himself. So why are you standing in front of the people, sweating, because who knows what they are going to think about me? They are thinking, oh my God, is this the last lecture today? Is the lunch going to be soon? I forgot to reply on that email. Oh my God, it's only Monday, and so on and so on. So nobody thinks about you. Second example, do you dance at the parties? Do you dance? If you believe that you are a good dancer, or at least adequate, you have no problem going to the party, whatever, corporate party or wedding party or birthday party, and doing some moves. But if you believe, and this is really important, if you believe, it has nothing to do with objective reality. It is your subjective feeling that comes from belief. That you are a really bad dancer and that you have 2 left legs. You are going to try to avoid that situation at all costs. Even if it means not going to the party at all. Right? It's all about your belief. Because you think that by dancing and you being a bad dancer, everybody will laugh at you. Okay? How about procrastination? Now that's a big subject. Certainly there are several reasons why people procrastinate, but shame is one of them. And you've seen that a lot of times. For example, do you know a band or a singer that created one gorgeous, excellent album or song, and then after that, nothing? Do you know why that happens? Because while creating the first album, you didn't think about what people are going to say, who is going to listen to it, is it good, is it bad, maybe I should do a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. But once you have a hit, you immediately start pondering inside your head, what will happen if my second song is much worse than my first? People will laugh at me. They will say that I'm a faker, that was accidental hit. And it will be obvious to everyone that I'm fake. By thinking that, you are stopping yourself from creating a second song. And you're just, I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow because today maybe it's not my best day. It is a form of self-sabotage. It is a self-sabotage that comes from low self-esteem. So being in a state of shame is absolutely terrible. However, even holding one minute speck of dust of shame also can hold you back in a really, really significant way. So that's a shame. Next on our list, number 30, is guilt. Emotion is blame and world is perceived as evil. Today's world is ridden with guilt. There is so much guilt going around. On one side, we want to be better people, better parents, better sons and daughters to our parents, better co-workers, better in our jobs, better grandparents. At the same time, all you hear all the time is that you are not good enough, you should do better, you should do more, and you should spend more time with your family and you should spend more time at work. It's simply impossible. So a lot of us start to believe that there is really something wrong with us and that we are not good enough. And I will be happy when I finish university or my dissertation, or when I am spending more time with my kids, or if I'm calling my parents more often, and so on and so on. And it has no end, because guilt reinforces itself. Because when you are in a state of guilt and you feel blame, you perceive world as evil. Now, you see how this goes. You perceive world as evil, which reinforces your guilt. Or, when you're in a state of shame, you are perceiving world as miserable, which reinforces your shame. That's why these are called emotional states, because you tend to stay in them. They make you see the world in a certain way that reinforces the initial, in this case, problem, because guilt and shame are definitely something you want to get rid of. So again, it is a belief that you are not good enough, and in this case, it's unlike shame, because shame is about what you believe others will think of you. Guilt has nothing to do with other people. Guilt is your own interpretation, what you should or should not be doing more or less. And it is a never-ending story, because if you happen to solve one of your core issues that makes you guilty in one field of your life, there will be another. Because if you spend more time on a job and maybe you get that promotion and that raise, you will definitely spend less time with your kids. And you will call your parents a little bit less frequently, and that's another source of guilt. Interesting thing about guilt is that people in a state of guilt tend to project their guilt outwards. So they're blaming others, If you know someone who's constantly blaming someone, it's not my fault, he did it. It was not mine to do, it was Michael's job. Okay? That's because he or she is carrying guilt inside. You know, because you cannot give what you don't already have. And for example, if you take an orange and squeeze it, what comes out of it? I mean, orange juice, right? It's not water, it's not oil, it's not petroleum, it's not strawberry juice, it's orange juice. Why? Because that's what's inside the orange. So people who are projecting guilt outwards are holding a lot of guilt inside. And they need our help. They don't need you to say, I'm not guilty, you are. Because, and that's a normal reaction when someone accuses you of something and you have nothing to do with it. It's not me, it's them. It's a reaction. It is action from the same frequency, from the frequency of guilt. By doing it's not my fault, it's your fault, you are reinforcing the original problem. So guilt is about low self-esteem, not being good enough, not being worthy of life little pleasures. It doesn't have to be huge. For example, someone gives you beautiful cake and you're looking at that cake and it looks really delicious, but you can see it's not exactly healthy. It's not good for your body, too much sugar or whatever, and you've put a little bit weight in these last few weeks. So you really shouldn't eat that. Now, what are you going to do? Let's say you can't avoid eating it because your grandmother gave you that cake and now, out of love, you're going to eat it. However, are you going to eat that cake with a sense of guilt? I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, it's so terrible for me. I'm going to diet tomorrow, on a new diet tomorrow. Or are you going to eat it, well, joyfully? You can just say, you know, okay, this is the first cake this week, maybe even this month, and I'm going to really enjoy it. And please do the latter, because the former puts you in a state of guilt. Okay? Next one, apathy. 50, apathy. Emotion is despair, and world is perceived as hopeless. Another uncomfortable feeling, apathy or depression or despair. And it's really easy to spot people that are in this state because they have that attitude of why, what's the point, why should I do anything, it's not going to change anything. And of course, while in that state, you perceive the world as hopeless, which again reinforces the depression or apathy. So it's not easy to come out of that state by itself because victims of that state are in a really low energy mode. In a really low energy mode, they have no willpower to change their state. Of course, when you take closer examination, you will see that it is just running away from your personal responsibility. And it's easy to stuck in that state because you perceive yourself as a victim. And world is terrible and no one is going to help me and I'm going in that state forever. And it takes some external energy from a caretaker or from your loved ones to give you enough boost to pull yourself out if you are deep in apathy. Of course, depression from time to time, if it lasts half a day, 1 day, it's not bad at all if you pull yourself out of it. It's not that good if you stick into it. Next, 75 is grief. Emotion is regret, and the world is perceived as tragic. Grief is typically a consequence of loss of loved ones, job, house, your pet. So it is a normal state. Everyone will experience it in some point in their life. However, please do not get stuck in it. And it's easy to get stuck in it. Because when you're feeling grief and regret, you perceive the world as tragic, which reinforces the grief. But there are other forms of grief too. For example, there is a Weltschmerz. That's a term coined in the 1800s, and meaning that's a special kind of grief that comes out of recognition that the world as it is will never be made in your taste. So you perceive that there are too many wars, injustice, there are kids starving somewhere, and you have a lot of food that can even activate your guilt. But just perceiving that world is far from perfect and comparing that world with your mental image, with some utopia that you hold in your head, can activate grief. So be careful to that. I'm not saying that we should ignore terrible things that are going in the world. Just don't react to that from this frequency. And that would be, oh, the world is terrible. Look at our government. Look, young people are leaving. Who is going to give a job to my kids? There is no good place in a workforce anymore. It's also sad, and we have wars, and we have famines, and we have sicknesses. Oh my God, it's so sad. It actually drains your energy. That energy should be used for better purposes to solve those problems if you resonate with them strongly. But if you just stick to sadness and grief in your head, world will look tragic and nothing to be done there. And that's really, really a problem. Next one is a kind of surprise. And it is a fear. 100. Fear, emotion is anxiety, and the world looks frightening. Fear, being in a 5th place, is kind of surprise. Because if you examine and read all those psychology and popular psychology books, you will see in most of them that fear is classified as a direct opposite to love. So we already know that love is very high. It is one of the best emotional states that you can possibly have. So being direct opposite of love would mean that fear is at the bottom of the scale. However, it isn't. Because grief, apathy, guilt and shame are even worse. In fear, you at least have some additional energy. And that's why nature created fear for us. It is our mechanism to cope with really life-threatening situations. So, if you are walking in the woods and you meet a bear, huge animal, dangerous, you want to run away, you want to be fast. You need extra energy in your legs and in your arms. And that situation is going to last for, 5 minutes? 15 tops. And then you're either eaten by a bear or you run away and no more fear. So fear, you just can't release it. However, in today's society, we have fear of losing a job, fear of terrorism, fear of running out of money in the old age. These fears do not go away after 10 or 15 minutes. And that's why it's so easy to stuck in this state of fear, especially because society at large has no problem being you in fear, because it is much easier to control you when you are in fear. You know? Because fearful people instinctively look for someone, some leader, who seems like confident, seems like he conquered his own fears. So we are looking to lead the leader because we want him or her to somehow rescue us from our own fears. But fear is mostly illusory. Mostly, if you are in a life-threatening situation here and now, that's fine. But if you are not, just remember what Mark Twain once said. I lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. In some spiritual groups, they have a saying that fear is false evidence appearing real. It is just your interpretation of the circumstances that you perceive. And it is skewed because when you are in a fear, and you feel anxiety, of course, the world seems frightening, which reinforces the fear. And it's easy to be in anxiety. If you are focused on a fear, if you don't have a courage to look the fear in the eyes, to face the fear, it is very easy to get sucked into. Next one, and this is a big one. We're going to talk a lot about this one from different perspectives. So this is just going to be a little small announcement of things to come. And it is 125, desire. Emotion is craving and the world is disappointing. Desire is a trap that a lot of people fall into. And now let me get this straight. Desire is socially not only acceptable, but even somehow enforced, because it is what makes our economy move. Your desires, because you want to have more stuff, because you want to be better, because you want to be richer. But now we have experience from those lower levels, and we know that whatever state you are in, you perceive the world in a way that's reinforcing the original, situation or problem. The same goes with desire. When you are in a state of desire, you feel craving. World is disappointing. World seems disappointing because there is no end to your desires. There is no end to your desires. For example, you want more money, right? How much? Exactly how much? Let's say $1 million or euros. Now maybe to you it seems like a lot of money. If I only had $1 million, I would be happy. However, once you reach the $600,000 or euros mark, $1 million will seem inadequate. 2 millions would be better. When you approach the $2 million mark, you begin to think that 5 millions would be even better. There is no end to it. And there is a beautiful metaphor in Buddhism for this state. These are ghosts with very big bellies and very, very small mouths. What they are trying to say is desire is insatiable. Insatiable. It has no end. And of course, you are like a hamster running inside your wheel, wanting for more. That only creates more desires. And what happens is that you progress to the next level, and that is anger. Emotion is hate, and the world is perceived as antagonistic. So hate is a symptom of anger. And anger is caused by unfulfilled desires. These two go hand in hand. And let me be perfectly clear here. Even your desire to be happy, or to be loved, or to be a more loving person to others, that seems unselfish completely, all of that also fit into a category of desire. We'll talk a lot about that later, because desire is one of the main traps that people fall into. They find something they want, and then they spend their whole life wanting it. While you are wanting something, you are in a state of desire, and you will never be happy. Because desire creates more desires. Craving creates more craving. And the world is disappointing because whatever you do, it's not enough, which reinforces the desire to the point where you are really frustrated. And that's a point that actually you progress to anger. Now, anger, it's not exactly happy emotion. It's not something that we would like more in your life. However, it contains a lot of energy that can be then somehow channeled into things that are more productive. Just as Jim Carrey once famously said, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer." It's not the answer because state of desire is insatiable. It only creates more desires. Okay? And if these desires are not met, people get angry. And you will notice that in these, especially in these states, it's very important to people to be right. It comes from insecurity. You know, okay, you have a plan, and I don't agree with that. Is that so tragic? It turns out for them it is. Because the world is antagonistic or disappointing. And if I'm not sticking to their version of reality, to their plan, it's a tragedy. It reinforces desire to be right, and anger because people are not right. People are not right because they don't agree with me. So it's a kind of, well, egoistic. Okay? Next state, and this is also a surprise, is 175. The state is pride, world is demanding, and emotion that goes with that is scorn. Now this is also a surprise because you wouldn't expect pride to be relatively low on the scale of consciousness. Because pride feels good. For the first time, we have emotion that actually feels good, better than anger, better than unfulfilled desires, and they're always unfulfilled, better than fear, grief, apathy, shame, guilt, and so on. So it is encouraged. In our society, people who feel pride because they are successful, they are encouraged. We look at them as leaders for people who are in fear. And it's so easy to find pride in, for example, management positions. There is always a lot of pride because I'm better than you. Because I did that and I was good and I finished schools and I worked hard and everybody can do that, but they are lazy and I'm better than everyone else. The problem with this level, the problem with pride, is that it is defensive. Because when you are in a state of pride, the world is demanding. Because nobody works as hard as I do, nobody is as smart as I am. So when you're in a state of pride, you feel need to defend your position. And sooner or later, it will happen that you will fail, you will make wrong assumptions, you will create a bad plan, something is going to go wrong, and then you will drop to shame and guilt. Because I should have known better. How stupid I was. I didn't work as hard as I should. That's guilt. What are people going to think of me? And if you are a successful CEO, owner of a company, and you have all those cars and houses and you play golf with your friends, if your business goes bust, there is a good chance that you will feel ashamed and then you will stop hanging out with other CEOs that are still in a level of pride because they didn't fall yet. So pride is, well, it's better of course than any of those. And for the first time it feels relatively good. But it is volatile, unstable situation because you're open to errors and then you're open to guilt and shame, even apathy because, you know, there's nothing to be done. It is just impossible to be in this demanding world. Okay? Next one is really important. It is a breakthrough point. So we are going to write it in another color. And it is 200. 200 is level of courage. Emotion is affirmation and world seems feasible. So this is a critical level. Courage is actually a tool. It's a universal tool, like a wrench, that allows you to transcend all those lower emotions and emotional states. Because these black emotional states are all about external circumstances. It is about being a victim. Why are you in anger? Because he made me angry. Okay? Why are you in fear? Because the world is full of traps and dangers. Courage allows you to perceive, that to really understand that happiness is an inside job. And if you are perceiving the world as, for example, frightening, that's because you are already in fear. So when we say courage, we primarily mean courage to take a long look, honest look at yourself, and to see what can we do about it. Or, in the words of Dr. David Hawkins, greatness is the courage to overcome obstacles. Now he's talking about greatness. Greatness is a courage. You need courage for greatness. So now we are going to more positive emotions, but this is a border between negative and positive one, and at the same time is a universal tool for you to transcend those lower states into higher states that we want to have more in our life. Next one. 250. Neutrality. Emotion is trust and world is perceived as satisfactory. On the level of neutrality, we finally have a release from strict positionalities. I have my point of view, you have your point of view, your opinion on the matter, and if you don't agree, that's fine. It's a kind of attitude, well, if I don't get this job, I'll get another. It is not apathy, where world is perceived as hopeless and why, what's the point, nothing makes sense. It's just not needing to be right. And of course, that means less conflict, that means less quarrel, that means embracing more inclusiveness, embracing other people's ideas, and it's not a tragedy if at the end things are not the way I imagined in the first place. Maybe they'll be better like this. Okay? So this is actually a step to higher levels because we are bit by bit leaving our ego behind. Next is really interesting. It's willingness. 310. Willingness. Emotion is optimism and the world is perceived as hopeful. Willingness is a real gateway to the higher levels because it implies that we've overcome our inner resistance to life and life circumstances. And we use life circumstances as a teaching tool. So every failure, quote unquote, is actually an opportunity to learn something new, to learn from your own mistakes. So you become self-guided, self-directed, and in the end, you perceive the world as hopeful. For the first time, we have here an emotion that we are fine with. It wouldn't be too terrible if we could somehow live all the time in the emotion or in a worldview of hopefulness. Okay? And on this level of neutrality, job is done good. So you satisfactory. Whatever it is that you need to do, even if you don't agree with it, even if you have a better plan, you will say, okay, and you'll do it satisfactory. Here, it is used as a teaching tool. So when some external circumstances come up that you are not exactly happy with, you will take it and embrace it and accept it and work with it. So people in this level have less resistance to life, they are more open, more friendly, they are not easily intimidated because they don't care being right. Actually, in a way, they know that every situation is a win-win situation. So either you win or you learn something. And that's great. Both of these are great. So willingness is actually a gateway to one more step towards real happiness that doesn't have anything with the external circumstances. True happiness has nothing to do with external circumstances. And that's level 350. That's acceptance. Emotion is forgiveness and world is perceived as harmonious. Qualifying question for this level is, do you really believe that your life depends on external circumstances? Once you really know that it doesn't, that you and you alone are the source of your entire experience, entire perspective of life, you come to acceptance, and emotion is forgiveness because you simply know that everyone is perceiving the world from their own level of consciousness that they reside in that very moment. So when someone is angry at you and tells you horrible stuff that are probably not true, for example, you are not going to get angry because you know that this person is just perceiving the world as demanding because it is already in anger, and he's yelling at you because he had so much anger to put out. and he's just emitting the frequency that's already in it. He's orange juice from the squeezed orange. He's just sowing the anger that has already inside in abundance of. Or, in the words of Dalai Lama, when you think everything is someone else's fault, you suffer a lot. When you realize that everything springs only from yourself, you will learn both peace and joy. You will learn peace and joy because you start to forgive people. You start to forgive them because you know they have no choice. We think that people have a choice when they are behaving in a certain way. But they are just reflecting their own level of consciousness. If they are in fear, please don't tell them, oh, you are so stupid, why are you focusing on that? You should focus on something positive. I mean, that's great, but that's not helpful. First, you need to forgive them because they are in fear and you need to lift them up. You're not going to do that by yelling at them because they are stupid, because they are acting like it is a fearful scenario, and it is not. For them it is. They perceive it in a certain way because they already hold the fear inside. Same goes for desire, anger, pride, guilt, apathy, shame, and so on. When you start forgiving people, when you really understand that you start to accept situations as they are because you know, people are just, they need help. They need help. You forgive them, and suddenly world is perceived as harmonious. And you suffer if you think that your life depends on external circumstances. If you want to perceive your life as peaceful and joyful, you should accept full responsibility for your own state of being. That's actually in willingness. And forgive everyone else for not knowing better. If you want to help them, explain this to them, or just send them link to this course. It is acceptance is a byproduct of understanding how universe works and how people perceive their own life. Next one is also going to surprise you because you would expect this to be on the top of the list. However, it is not. It is 400. It is reason, emotion is understanding, and life is meaningful. This is the level of intelligence and rationality. And we are talking about top scientists, Nobel Prize winners, people that are very skilled with symbols and abstract concepts, and most of them change our life in a very significant way. This is a level of medicine, this is a level of machinery, computer science, even artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. The problem with this level is that intellectualizing can become an end of itself. You know, it can actually stop you from going any further. And also, it is a problem with distinguishing objective from subjective. Even top scientists, brilliant scientists, had a problem with that. For example, when Albert Einstein was presented with quantum physics, that we'll touch about later, we are not going to deal too much in quantum physics, but just a tiny taste. He said that it's impossible because God doesn't gamble. God doesn't roll the dice, I believe his exact words were. He couldn't understand the difference between objective and subjective. And that's the problem with this level. However, this is impressive level. This is really impressive level. Very few people ever come to the level of reason. However, it is also a level that should be transcended. And what we should transcend reason to is level 500. Love. Emotion is reverence, and world is perceived as benign. This love is not love as depicted in Hollywood or Bollywood movies. Now, that kind of love is possessive, it has a lot of jealousy, a lot of insecurity, a lot of controlling, a lot of fear, desire, anger. So it is actually a love from lower part of the scale. This love does not come from mind. It doesn't need a rationality, it comes from heart. It is a way of being that is loving and nurturing and accepting. This love, it has a certain redemptive quality by forgiving people that are not yet able to reach this love. You are actually helping them transcend their limitations and reach the top of the scale. So this love is a way of being. It is not a way of doing. It's not something that you necessarily have to achieve and by moving objects or by saying things. It's just a state of being that is peaceful, that is understanding, that is accepting, that is compassionate and kind. When you are in that form of love, heart-based love, not mind-based love, you see the world as benign. And that's a beautiful place to be. Just understanding that love is not something that you should get from the outside. This love comes from the inside. It's your natural state. We'll talk a lot about that later, but this love is not about doing. This love is about being and accepting and being kind and generous, not because you think that you should be or do, but because you know that it is the most powerful tool that will create the most beneficial impact on all your environment. But even that, it's not the end of our list, because at 540 we have joy. Emotion is serenity, and the world is perceived as complete. As love becomes more and more unconditional, it starts to manifest itself as joy. Joy that not created or affected by any circumstance outside. It's your own inner joy. It springs out of you. It is untouched, it is unaffected by positive or negative circumstances. It is just a state of being. It is a state of being that is light and happy and joyful and kind and compassionate to all people around. And what's really impressive is once you cross this threshold of love and joy, synchronicities comes to your life. Life starts unfolding by synchronicity. And I don't know if you heard about synchronicities. We'll talk a lot about them later. But these are meaningful coincidences. You need something that's very difficult to find. Let's say a book. And then you already asked a lot of people about, do they have a book? No, nobody has it. And then one day you come to your friend's house and there it is on the table. How do you have that book? Oh, I already forgot about it. I lent that book to a friend of mine 10 years ago and he returned that book to me just yesterday. So there is a coincidence that you needed that book. You never ever needed it up until yesterday. And that friend returning that book to your friend. So these two events have no connection in a linearity of events. They are not connected, but they are connected by a meaning, because you need it and suddenly it appeared. It is a synchronicity. Synchronicity is doors opening where you never expected, exactly when you need it. Exactly at the time, at the space as you need it. It is impossible to understand synchronicities at the level of reason. So level of reason is all about the linearity of events. Think Newtonian physics. Isaac Newton calibrates as at 499. We'll do calibrations later. But so Sir Isaac Newton was a brilliant mind, but his mind was stuck in linear thinking. Synchronicities are not connected to any form of linearity of events. Events just happen, accidents, quote unquote, happen when you need them, as you need them, how you need them, in the right place at the right time. So, being above 500 is entering the domain of non-linearity. And that is a shortcut that we are aiming to. So, manifesting abundance is about making shortcuts through your own fields of consciousness. It's even easier. It's letting universe organize whatever coincidence there has to be in order to achieve certain result. And synchronicities start to happen when you are in a state of love and joy. So, it's not that success creates happiness. A lot of people believe that. I will be happy once I have enough money, love of my life, good job, whatever. No. Success is a byproduct of happiness. First you need to be happy and joyful and loving and kind. Then you will be really successful, because here, from level 500 upwards, everything happens with so much less effort, with almost no effort at all. Once you cross that threshold of 500, you become more successful with much less effort. And you will see that too. There's not much left to say. After joy, there is only 600. Peace. And at the level of enlightenment, emotion is, okay, let's say, ineffable. And world just is. Our job here at Manifesting Abundance is to help you cross this threshold of love. So actually, we have two thresholds. One is here, when delineated by courage, and second one is here above love. And this is our map of consciousness. Now you may say, so what? It's so very interesting, I admit, great, but how does that help me? Let me show you this. They asked people, how happy you are? Meaning this. For example, you find 100 people at the level of courage, and you ask him or her, are you happy? Yes or no? How many percent of people said, yes, I'm happy being at that particular level? Let's see the results. From the bottom. So only 1% of people who are living in a constant state of shame will say they are happy with their life. That rises to 4%, people living in guilt, in constant guilt. Then about 10% when you ask people living in constant fear, and it rises to 22% for people in pride. Only 22%. It is strongly encouraged. Pride is by a lot of people, especially those living in those lower levels, seen as a target, as a goal, but it is not. Only 22% of people living in the level of pride say that they are happy. However, once you cross the threshold to courage, suddenly it becomes 55%. 55%. So just by jumping this barrier, you achieve great result or achievement or happiness level or whatever. And then it starts rising slowly to 60%, to 68%. When you cross this threshold of love, it rises to 89%, then 96%, then 100% from peace upwards. Do you want to be happier? This is why we started this course. You want to be happier, you want to be more joyful, you want to manifest abundance of good emotions in your life, of happiness, of joy. You need courage, because courage is what will make you be, well, much more happy than being below this line. Then you will slowly progress to love, and once you are over the line of love, here synchronicities kick in. Synchronicities kick in, and suddenly life becomes more joyful, you become much more successful with much less effort. It all depends on you, your reality, your subjective, of course, there is no other. Your subjective perception of reality is an inside job. You just need to take responsibility for it and recognize that your happiness is not dependent upon certain external circumstances, but it depends on your state of being. And work out this map. You want to release whatever is holding you back, black letters, and then at the level of neutrality, the system becomes self-guiding, self-perpetuating. It actually accelerates itself. Okay? But just to make one final point, let's consider this scenario. A bum is sitting on a bench in a nice neighborhood. How you perceive that situation is entirely up to your current level of consciousness. So before break, we are going to make a break in a minute. Just let's see, how do people perceive that seemingly simple situation, bum sitting on a bench in a fine, nice neighborhood, depending on their level of consciousness. People on the level of shame will perceive bum as a dirty, disgusting, and disgraceful. At the level of guilt, he would be blamed for his condition. He deserves what he gets. Probably he is a lazy welfare cheat. It's about guilt. Who is guilty? People at the level of apathy will say, this is evidence that society cannot do anything about homelessness. It is hopeless. It is a problem that cannot be solved. Level of grief. Old man looks tragic and friendless. At the level of fear, bum is threatening a social menace. We should call the police before he commits some crime. Because world is perceived as frightening. At the level of desire, he represents a frustrating problem. Why does somebody not do something? It's a frustrating problem. In anger, old man looks like he could be violent. One could be furious that such condition even exists. At the level of pride, he is seen as embarrassment or lacking the self-respect to better himself. Then we are crossing the threshold, and we are coming to courage. And suddenly, we might be motivated to wonder if there is a local homeless shelter. Maybe all he needs is a job and a place to live. It's not about blaming. It's not about who is the guilty party. It's not unsolvable problem. It is maybe something that we can contribute to. Maybe we can help him somehow. On the level of neutrality, the bum looks okay, maybe even interesting. Live and let live. He's not hurting anyone. I mean, that's maybe not my choice. I wouldn't like to be homeless. However, he's choosing that condition and I'm fine with that. On the level of willingness, we might decide to go down there and see what we can do to cheer him up. On the level of acceptance, the man on the corner looks intriguing. He probably has an interesting story to tell. He is here for reasons we may never understand. At the level of reason, he is a symptom of the current economic and social malaise. So we would think about it a little bit, intellectualize, do maybe some experiment or study. But now we are crossing the threshold of 500 and 600, and at these higher levels of love and joy and peace, the old man begins to look not only interesting, but friendly and even lovable. Perhaps we should then be able to see he was in fact one who has transcended social limits and gone free. A joyful old guy with the wisdom of age in his face and serenity that comes from indifference to material things. Maybe he is smarter than we are. We accept his condition and suddenly we see benefits of it. And of course, at levels of 600 and more, we see bum as our own inner self in its temporary expression. So, how you perceive life has nothing to do with external circumstances. It's about what you do with them. It's about your level of understanding, your level of consciousness, because you are creating your own reality. And who is right? Now we have about bum, about 15 different points. And this guy thinks that it is a dangerous situation, and here we accept that situation and we see the benefits of it. Who is objectively right? There is no objective reality. Your reality depends on your internal vibration, your internal frequency, your internal level of consciousness. This is a map of consciousness. And your level of happiness goes with it. It is directly correlated. The higher the level, the higher the happiness. You choose how to react or how to respond to circumstances. Your happiness has nothing to do with what happens, just how you respond to that situation.